today I wanted to talk about a conversation I alluded to in last week's video. The day of the Capitol riots, insurrection, Sudoku, okay? The day that was happening, I was attempting to have potentially difficult conversations with people who are, I consider to be acquaintances / friends, okay? Not friends of depth, but ex-coworkers who I actually decided to hang on to because of relationship. Okay, you know what I mean. So that level. So at the time I filmed that video, I was still not sure where those conversations were going to go, the direction that they were going to go. And clearly here I am a week later in a very interesting space, smack dab in between an attempted coup last week and Lord knows what's going to happen during the inauguration next week. And I've ended those conversations. Not ended, but you know what I mean. Now I know the outcome. And I wanted to share something with you all about that if you were curious, as well as for anybody who has ears to hear. Okay? So in last week's video, I explained that the whole concept of what privilege is. And I used myself as the example of privilege, or of being in a privileged situation. And I had a coaching client recently tell me during our group call that she really appreciated the fact that I did that because it made it more digestible. And that was intentional, that was on purpose, because one of the easiest things to do as a human is to point outward. It is very difficult to digest at times a version of you that you have not decided is you. So, for example, let's say you're a jerk. Nobody's walking around thinking they're a jerk, if that makes any sense. The people outside of them kind of know in general this person is a jerk. The person who's a jerk isn't going to think that they're a jerk, and therefore they are going to get jerk results. And more likely than not, they are going to say that those results are somebody else's fault, until one day they realize that they have some really crappy behaviors and they decide to figure out where those behaviors came from, and they learn or realize that the group of behaviors that they have been practicing is what the rest of us calls a jerk. And then they move on and they fix it, and then they realize, oh, snap diddly, I was creating those crappy results myself because I was a jerk. So anyway, people don't typically look at themselves as privileged. It has become a very triggering word, specifically in these United States of America, and specifically around race. So that is why I decided to give an example that was not race-based, because it just cuts through all that muck and that mire, okay? And gets people to understand that all of us are privileged in some sense. So anyway, back to the conversations real quick. One of the conversations was with an ex-coworker who was posting things concerning Antifa and the deep state and what seemed very listen. In our conversation, he said to me that people had called him a bigot. And I said to him, I'm not going to call you a bigot because I actually care about you, but you may want to consider that the things you are posting are what people are looking for when they're looking for bigots. Yes, I absolutely said that. I said it. Yes, I did. Because it was some misogyny. I was like, what is this? So like I said to you guys last week, instead of just talking behind his back, I went straight to the source and I asked him, what's good? What is going on? Not because I had intention to agree, but because I was just trying to get some insight and understanding as to where somebody who I thought was a different thinker could come up with these things. And ironically, in our conversation that went from a post on his page about Rise Patriots during, not after, during the insurrection, and then eventually evolved to a conversation in the inbox. During that conversation, he mentioned to me that he had tried to have conversations like this with other Black friends and it had never gotten this far. Sorry. And if you're watching this, hi. Okay, I'm not talking behind your back. I'm talking in front of your face. Okay, that's an inside joke. The thing I would say is, if you are a non-Black person, or if you are a person who is in a privileged category, like you are able-bodied, like you are a man, okay, any privileged category, like you are, I don't know, financially very well off, and you have tried to have conversations with people who are in the non-privileged category, and it didn't get that far, you may just want to consider what I said in the previous video, which you should go back and watch, the one that's called Let's Talk About the Capitol, that you are not doing a good job of listening and believing the story as it is being told to you. Oftentimes, the person in the privileged category spends a lot of time trying to diminish the story of the unprivileged person because the privileged person has not had that experience, and they take their experience as the only experience, the only plausible one. And we already established that that's not the case, right, in the previous video. So that's the first thing you should consider. The next thing you should consider is Black people tired. I mean, folks is tired, okay? I just had a therapy appointment yesterday, and I was discussing this very thing with her, and she just happens to be a Black woman. Fun fact, my actual and other long-standing therapist, I have 2 therapists, is a whole white man, okay? So I just started with this Black chick. She's great, but I've been with the white dude for a decade, okay? So anyway, but I'm having a conversation with her, and I was like, Black folks tired, okay? And when a person is in a non-privileged place, they really don't feel like spending a bunch of time explaining to you why they're struggling. They too busy struggling. They too busy trying to stay alive. I wrote a blog post, I think it was called about privilege, marginalization, and the special needs parent or the special needs child or something like that on my blog several years ago. I'll put a link to it in the information box of this video. You can take that experience and move it right on over to any marginalized or non-privileged group of people. We tired. Okay, a person in a wheelchair ain't got that much time or that emotional capacity to be sitting there explaining to your able-bodied butt, okay, what's going on with them. They too busy fighting these wheelchair companies. That can be trash, by the way, okay? Y'all would think that in a society where people have different abilities, places like wheelchair companies would have exquisite customer service and just be here to help people. And I will tell you, as a person who's new to the game with my 8-year-old son who uses a wheelchair, it has been one of the biggest stressors. Wheelchair companies and adaptive ability companies can be trash. But here's the thing. If you're a person with a body, you don't realize that this person's stressing out because their wheelchair is falling apart and they can't get the company to deliver their wheelchair to them. Or, like in my case, they order some adaptive equipment for their child and the wheelchair company not only has not brought it to them, but they come straight into their house, stand in their living room and accuse them of stealing a piece of adaptive equipment because they see it and they think that she got it from them, but what she did was borrow it from another parent because they were moving too slow. And then they make her show them the serial number to prove that she hadn't stolen it from their equipment stash. Yes, that happened to me. And so in your able-bodied life, you're not walking around thinking people going through all of that. Okay, that was probably intersectionality. That was probably a sucky day in the life of special needs Black momdom, okay, to be accused of stealing something. When I got it, I had to borrow something because you was moving so slow. But see, that's the thing. People are tired. Also, it's kind of not a non-privileged person's job to educate you. If you are poor and somebody that's rich comes to you and wants to know more about life in poverty, you're too busy dealing with the poverty. This rich person's little tete-a-tete is exhausting you. Do you see what I'm saying? It's exhausting. If you're a woman and men are just out here being trash, I'm not saying all men are trash. Come on, hear the words I said. If some men in your life are being trash and you are exhausted from having to like hyper exert yourself just to get somebody to listen to you in a meeting, and you go to something and you have people tell you dumb stuff. Like, oh, well, I don't know how you figured out that that was going to be the change on the software. It must have been a lucky guess. And yes, that was said to me one time. I actually worked at a place where my boss told me that the reason why I came up with the same thing that the software company that we were beta testing for was because it was a lucky guess. Anyway, so you could see how a woman in that space might not want to be the one explaining it to you. I had coaching clients, majority of whom my coaching clients are Black women. Not all, but majority, they tend to be Black women. I've had coaching clients tell me that last year when all the George Floyd protests were going on, they were pulled up on a call and asked to talk about Blackness. Matter of fact, I just realized I have a family member who actually did that. They did it. My coaching client was like, nah, son, we off that. So anyway, the reason why somebody might not get that far in a conversation is that. And you have to understand, if you are in the privileged position and you actually have a heart to understand, the first thing that you do is not necessarily go and ping somebody who's just trying to make it through this game that's not rigged for them. Okay? Somebody like me who decides intentionally to talk to you for a moment, for a very intentional and brief moment. I was not about to go through no changes, okay? I gave that thing a hot two over the span of several days, and that was it. I was like, I'm out. We are few and far in between. You are correct. And I myself, being a person who grew up in the Caribbean, I have privilege, okay? I myself have privilege because I was not foundationally grown in Missouri, where I lived. The governor looked like me. The police officers looked like me, or they're related to me. Everybody in authority looked like me. So I even have a privilege. And oftentimes I have to sit back and learn. So what do I do? What do I do? Let me go, because this is getting long. There are books. If I can find a good resource, I'll put a link up above. There are podcasts, okay? I have a friend who is another white guy who I used to work with, who has on and off for years been asking me to have these types of conversations with him on a platform. We started these conversations at work pre-Obama, and we were going to do a blog back then because it was that long ago. He has started a podcast. He sometimes feels like, what can I do? What can I do? And he's asked me to have conversations with him about this stuff. And as you guys know, because I told you last time, I try not to have these types of conversations, but I feel like God told me last week, release me to talk about this a bit more on my Find Your Light series, so that you guys can see that there's a lot more behind the pineapple, okay? My joy is intentional. That's the whole point of the pineapple. But I also, I got a working brain up here. And so consider researching articles, books, movies, podcasts, media that has already packaged the story of marginalization for you. And then enter the conversation from a place of some knowledge and some research that you've already done. And don't ever force somebody to bear the burden of your lack of knowledge, your triggered, as people call it, fragility, your ability to be triggered whenever somebody just tells you their story and it might not paint the group you're in the best light. Don't let them bear that burden, right? Take it upon yourself. If I want to learn, and I have, about a specific group of people, and I have done this multiple times, I have a tendency to join Facebook groups about that specific topic and read. Just read. Barely speak. I mean, I'll spend months, okay, reading information of everything you could imagine in the special needs community, very specific things that people have to do, mental health concerns that have come up either in me or I suspect in other people that they've shared with me. I just want to learn. Okay. I don't go to another person, try to milk them dry, and I'd be like, oh my God, why are you telling me that I'm this? Oh my God. So anyway, that's today's video. It's heck along. Hopefully the ones of you that asked me for a longer video enjoyed this. And yeah, I don't know that every Find Your Light Friday is going to be this long, but if you guys like it, I will keep doing it. And next week is the inauguration. You guys stay wise, stay safe, pray, humble yourself and pray if you're a Christian. I'll put links to everything I talked about in the information box of this video, and I just pray that as a country we can figure out how to heal and move forward. And unfortunately, for those who want to overlook the pain that is intrinsically baked into the cake that is our country, that's woven into the fabric of our country, I have never experienced any healing in my personal life, within myself, or within my relationships that did not begin with a full frontal look at the actual ugly problem that was causing it. Avoidance is not going to help. Anyway, that's not what I want to get into. Create the most incredible evening and rest of your day and weekend. Be well, be encouraged, stay safe. Here's a pineapple. Bye, y'all.